Hello. Today I'm going to talk about whether a company that needs engineering leadership should hire a consultant or a full timer. Consultant would be someone like me who has worked as a CTO before and now works as a consulting CTO. Whereas a full timer would be a CTO or a VP or director or whatever, right? Engineering manager, architect, whatever the job title may be, staff engineer, etc. So the first thing to understand is a full timer is a car while a consultant is a boat. Neither is better than the other, but don't hire one if you need the other. Each of them has their advantages, right? But they are not substitutable. You can't use a boat to go to your office, and you can't use your car to go on a pleasure cruise in the ocean. So they're meant for different purposes. So one is not better, they're different. So let's see how they're different. Let's start with the advantages of a full timer. One advantage is that he'll be able to do more work than a consultant who splits his time between companies, typically. He'll be able to work, a full timer will be able to work 40 hours a week with your company. And there's often more than 40 hours of work every week, right? There's more than full time work. Especially at leadership levels, there's always more work to do than there is time. So that is one advantage of a full timer. The other advantage is that he retains context from earlier discussions with people, be it engineers, be it business side people, be it customers, be it understanding the company strategy, that he already has a lot of context. And in the course of the particular engagement that you have in mind, the particular work or project you have in mind, he will be getting more context, which he will retain with him. Whereas a consultant may not have the full context, and he will gain context in working with your company at your cost. And once the engagement is over, he may walk away, taking that information, that knowledge with him. Whereas with a full timer, that knowledge remains within the company. The next advantage of a full timer is greater commitment. He has more skin in the game. He's more emotionally and financially invested in making a company succeed. Not that consultants are not, like ethical ones would do their best for you, but at the end of the day, they still work with multiple companies. The other advantage of a full timer is lower cost as measured hourly. So basically, if you take a full timer who earns a high salary, let's say 1 crore rupees, and you divide that by the number of hours in a year, right? And I, for example, today as a consultant charge more than that hourly. So even though you may think that 1 crore is a lot of money, which it actually isn't given today's market realities, but still consultants charge more. So one advantage of a full timer is lower hourly cost. The other advantage of a full timer is availability. All his time is guaranteed to your company. Whereas a consultant, you have to have some kind of a discussion with him. And if you ask for a certain number of hours or a certain scope of work and he commits to that, later on, if something else comes up, he may or may not be able to have time for that. The way I work as a consultant is I commit a certain number of hours to a company or a certain scope of work. And the remaining time, if I'm free, I'm happy to do more for the company I'm working with. If not, no, right? And if the company wants more time, they have to tell me ahead of time, Karthik, we want X amount of your time in this engagement. So we'll have a conversation, we'll agree on this. Let's say we agree on 20 hours a month or 40 hours a month, whatever it is, right? That will be a commitment from both sides. But suddenly, if you tell me we need 100 hours this month, it may or may not work out for me. So that is one advantage. The other advantage of a full timer is that he can drive multiple initiatives in parallel. So these are some advantages of a full timer. Let's talk about some advantages of a consultant. The first is some work is better done by consultants. So, for example, I often work with companies where they seek my opinion as a second opinion on costly and hard to change decisions. It's not that they don't have a competent full timer on staff. In some cases they may, in some cases they may not. But even if they do, and as a competent, I mean like as good as me, like CTO level thing, not to imply that there's no talent in the company, but do they have a CTO? But even if they do, the same person can't give a second opinion, right? And if you're making a decision that's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, running it by me for a few hours is definitely worth it. Or if you can't change it, like the stack you're using, if you are saying, should I use Go? That's not a decision you can change easily. And I engaged when I was working as a full-time CTO earlier, started, before I work as a consultant now. I hired one of my friends, a fellow CTO, in this advisory capacity, not because I am not capable. I had experience doing all but one tasks in that role, right? Like everything that was needed, I had already done before. It was boring for me. There's just one task that challenged me. So it's not that I was not capable of doing it. It's just that a second opinion is worth it for critical decisions. So that is something a consultant is uniquely positioned to provide. The second thing a consultant can do well is an advisory role, not an execution role, where you say do this, do this, do this, right? But an advisory role. Let me define what an advisor is. Any project has to have two roles, a DRI and an advisor. Who is a DRI? Directly responsible individual. He is the one who takes responsibility for the project. He is free to do whatever he wants. His ultimate decision, but the accountability is also his. An advisor gives advice. He may be asked for advice or he may proactively give advice. And the DRI is free to take it or leave it. The advisor can't say, hey, why didn't you consult me on this decision? And even if he is consulted, he can't say, hey, you consulted me and you didn't take my advice. Why is that? He cannot question the DRI. It's completely up to the DRI. So these are the two roles. So this kind of advisory role is better done by a consultant. The other thing a consultant can do well is an audit, for lack of a better term. When I say audit, I don't mean like a tax audit, something that is bureaucratic and necessary, doesn't add value, but you have to do it. That's not what I mean. I mean to say an audit of how the company works, or the project management, or the tech. Right? Because for an audit, you want an unbiased opinion. Obviously, the same people who built the tech can't evaluate the tech or the processes in the company, how the project management works, how tasks are assigned, how sprints are run, and so on. The other advantage of a consultant is you can hire him for a very limited number of hours whom you can't afford full time. So, for example, if you're looking to hire a competent engineering lead, you should set aside 1 crore a year minimum as cash. We're not even talking about equity here, cash. Maybe that works out to 8 lakhs or something per month, 8.33 lakhs. Maybe you can't afford that, right? Which is completely reasonable because I've been there, I've run a startup with a very small budget, right? So I totally understand that. There's no judgment here. But if that is a situation, you can work with, let's say, someone for me for 1 point something lakhs a month. You get limited number of hours, but it is like the Uber model, right? Like buying a car may be cheaper in the long run, but if you just want to take occasional journeys by car once in 3 weeks, an Uber will be cheaper, even though per hour or per kilometer it is costlier. A consultant is also appropriate for a focused engagement where you have a very limited scope of work and you say, just do this. For example, hiring is a focused engagement. Another kind of a focused engagement may be architect or mobile app. Right? We have our backend sorted out, we have our front end sorted out. Our company as a whole, the project management runs well. It's not that everything has to be put in place, but just one thing, just the mobile app, for example, or maybe even just the iOS app to focus it further. That is when you should work with a consultant. If you need everything, hey, please set up our back end, front end, mobile, please hire the team, please set up engineering processes in place, please run sprints. If you want all that, then you should go with a full timer. The other advantage of a consultant is he's lower risk to hire. Right? Hiring a full timer is a big commitment, and if it doesn't work out, I've seen companies stuck with the wrong person for a year or longer. And many engineers have quit because of the wrong engineering leader being hired and so on, right? So, a consultant is lower risk to hire. A consultant is also faster to hire. Hiring an engineering leader takes multiple quarters because these people are very rare in the market. Everyone competent already has a job, or people are lining up to hire him. So, when I looked for a job as an engineering leader full time, as a CTO in my case, it took me 2 months or so to find a full time job, which is very fast actually. 6 months may be more typical, could also be a year. Whereas if you want to hire me as a consultant, you can do it today. A consultant is suitable for immediate when immediate results are needed. So it's a trade-off between optimal in the short term and optimal in the long term. If you need immediate results, you should consider a consultant. The other situation in which you can consider a consultant is to offload work from the core team. So let's say you have a CTO and he's very busy. He has more work than he has time. He could offload one area of work to me. He could say, Karthik, take care of the mobile architecture, me or another consultant, whoever it is, under the authority of the CTO. So the CTO is still the guy in charge. He has complete control over everything. He has just delegated some part of it to a consultant. So these are the factors based on which you need to decide whether a consultant or a full-timer is right for you. There are two different things. One is not a substitute for the other. So for example, sometimes people talk about a virtual CTO. Often the service is pitched as everything a CTO can do but part-time. Just Google for virtual CTO, there'll be a bunch of companies providing this service. That is how they present it, and that doesn't make sense. You can't do a full-time work part-time. And I speak from experience as well. You have to be focused as a part-timer. So if I were to take on a job as a virtual CTO, I will say, hey, there are some areas of work I'll do, some I won't do. I'll take care of architecture. I'll take care of engineering processes like code review, deployment, etc. Continuous deployment, coding guidelines, etc. I'll set up a healthy engineering culture of tech talks, knowledge sharing, documentation, etc. I'll set up the project management processes. How do we run sprints? How do we prioritize? Different stakeholders in the company have different priorities, right? Marketing may want something, sales may want something, UX may want something, the CEO may want something. How do you integrate all of these into one coherent list of priorities? I'll take care of that. I won't take care of day-to-day project execution. You can't ask me every day, hey, how is this project going? Right? So I will not be an engineering manager dealing with people issues and all these things, right? So if I were to take on a job as a virtual CTO, there will be some areas of a CTO's job which I will not be doing. Because again, you can't do full-time work part-time, right? So anyway, understand that these are two different types of work. Depending on your needs, you need to hire the right person. If you're not sure, talk to me. I'll advise you on whether you should continue to work with me or whether you should work with me at all, or whether you should hire a full-timer. And if you need to hire a full-timer, whether you need my help in hiring. Thank you.